First things first, this is all my opinion, and if mine differs from yours, that is fine. You're entitled to your opinion just as much as I am entitled to mine. Just leave a comment down below with yours. Now the main things that I'm going to be talking about are improved hardening, turbo, and CVS, and then by extension of that, field mods. Now we're going to start off with improved hardening, and realistically it's not hardening that's the issue, it's just the track health. Because if you removed the track health from hardening, it would be fine and hardening wouldn't be the issue. But currently this is the way that you get your track health with equipment, improved hardening. Now in the days before equipment 2.0, 907s, 140s, T62As, any 320 alpha damage gun that was fast firing and that could permatrack someone was deadly to heavy tanks and tank destroyers, especially turretless tank destroyers. But now we're in a situation where the 907, the 140 and all these 320 alpha damage guns are pretty useless in the current meta because they cannot permatrack someone. And that is because it will combine whatever hardening it has with then the field mods, as you can see here, the left hand field mod, which increases the suspension durability by 30%, and the suspension durability is track health that we're talking about, and then it gives it all terrain buffs as well. So this is why medium tanks like the 140 are basically just irrelevant now, because you cannot permatrack someone unless they are making a mistake in the game by not using HP. Realistically, if the Jagdpanzer E100 isn't using hardening, they are playing it wrong. Because if you're in any type of tank destroyer that isn't a sniper TD and you're going to be somewhat brawling, you should be having hardening. The exact same thing goes for heavy tanks. It has basically made hardening a 100% necessary choice on tanks. And some of you may say, well, yes, but now, if you go back before equipment 2.0, you had vents, rammer, stab on every single tank. And yes, that is true. But vents, rammer, stab meta, let's call it, because there is always going to be a meta equipment and there is always going to be meta tanks and so on and so on. But the vents, rammer, stab meta was a hell of a lot better than this hardening meta. And let's be honest, this is HP turbo rammer. That is the meta right now. If you are a brawling tank and your tank can put HP turbo rammer without too many sacrifices, that is 100% what you should be using. You get all the track health, you get the health increase, you get the speed increase, and then you get the DPM increase. You have everything going for you. If you removed track health from the hardening and the field mods, I think that overnight the game would slow down. Players would be punished more for making mistakes, and therefore they will quickly learn not to make those mistakes. We already have consumables that are on cooldown. You get them back every 1.5 minutes. I don't feel like we need to have extra track health to negate even this. I feel like this is already more than enough to stop players from making mistakes and then still being able to recover from it. Because if someone makes a mistake in a heavy tank, or if you want to circle a tank destroyer, you can't do that anymore. Because the tank destroyers have way too much health for their tracks. Okay, so how do we fix the track health issue? And there's two ways that I'd maybe go about it. The first one is to outright remove it from the game in forms of field mods and also the equipment. Or what you could do is make it so that the tanks like the Jagdpanzer E100 have 250 track health. Because if you didn't know, there are a lot of tanks in the game that have just 250 track health. And then there's only a few that have 300 track health. And the difference between that, when you get the 30% bonus, is quite big. It goes from having 250, obviously on the track health, to then 325. And if you have 300, you go to 390 track health. Now, if it was 325, that means that if the 140 was to high roll, it would pen it and track it. If it was to low roll, it would not pen it and track it in one shot. And if you didn't know, track health is tied to alpha damage. So if you high roll a pen, you'll track. But if you low roll the pen, you won't. That then brings me on to, well, what would you do with hardening? If it doesn't do track health, would you do anything to it? And you could leave it and just, that'll probably be enough, to be honest with you. Or, if you still want hardening to be the go-to choice for heavy tanks, combine it with spool liner. It doesn't have to be everything that spool liner has, but I feel that spool liner is basically useless in this game. I have never seen someone use spool liner unironically on a tank. For meme builds and stuff like that, yes, people use it. But they don't actually use it to be effective. If you combine spool liner with hardening, it would still be the best equipment choice for heavy tanks in the game, as you can see. It doesn't have to be everything, as I said. You could just take the protection from crew injuries, for example, and maybe the stun duration. The rest of it, you could just get rid of. Or even if it was just the stun duration. What this would allow people to do is be able to play 140s again and actually have a medium tank meta that would be good for the game. Because currently, it's heavy tank meta, and if you're having hardening, yep, that's it. Well done. You can basically just go and brawl and just be happy. Or you're in an assault TD like the Jagdpan Z100. You have hardening, yep, there you go. You can't get tracked. And by extension, this also goes to light tanks, right? How many times was it before Equipment 2.0 that you could get perma-tracked by a light tank if you didn't have a good crew? It was great. Light tanks were actually able to not just spot, but also go ahead and be annoying to tank destroyers and whatnot by getting behind them. But nowadays, that doesn't exist. So they are my issues with hardening and how I would resolve it, because I do feel that it is quite a big issue in the game. Because the games are getting faster and faster and faster. You see so many 15.5s, and that is a lot to do with the matchmaker as well. But I'm not going to speak about the matchmaker in this video, because that is a topic all on its own. But stuff like this doesn't help the situation where you try and track someone from advancing and they just goes, yep, doesn't matter, you don't have the alpha, I'm not getting tracked. And it instantly, repair kit, you need another 2 shots to track him. But it's just not, that's just idiot proofing a tank for no reason. Now all of this also applies to the experimental equipment, because I do feel that if you remove the track health from this, it would still be fine. You still get more than enough. You get the hit points increase and then the config, right? I feel that that is good enough. Now moving on to turbo and also CVS. Now these are 2 things that I don't think should have ever been added into the game. I don't think the game needed them, and I don't think that the game is better for them. With that being said, I do think that certain tanks are better if you have a turbo. But all that you realistically had to do was just buff the top speed on those tanks instead of adding a turbo. For example, right now, heavy tanks can go nearly as fast as medium tanks. For example, the VZ55. If you put a turbo on this thing, if you put a Bond turbo, it goes at 60, which is faster than most medium tanks. If you put a standard turbo, not even in the correct slot, that's going to go at 58, which is again faster than most medium tanks. Most medium tanks go at around about 50 to 55. As you can see, STB1, 50, 121B, 53, although I do have the field mod, so it goes at 55. The Centurion Action 10, again, 55. The 30B goes at 65, but it trades a lot of armor to go that fast. The 907, the 140, the TCS-2A all go at 55. There are a lot of medium tanks that go at 50 to 55. And usually past 55 to 60, it trades a lot of armor for getting that speed. Like the Leo, like the 30B. Whichever way you look at it, whether you look at it from medium tanks catching up to light tanks, or heavy tanks catching up to medium tanks, you can see that they're always closing the gap. It's almost each update, it seems. Now, for the most part, heavy tanks are relatively slow. If you take a look at the S-Conk, I think that this is a decent point to show. I would say that the S-Conk is a pretty good baseline for top speed. It goes at 40, and that is the maximum. I think that 40 should be as fast as heavy tanks should realistically go, unless they sacrifice quite a fair amount of armor. The VZ55, for example, you could make it go faster than an S-Conk, of course, but I don't think that it should be going 54 base. The 277 is a pretty good example of this, because it goes at 59 top speed. It doesn't need to go that fast. That is faster than most medium tanks in the game. And if you were to use a turbo, let's say you put a Bounty turbo, it goes at 64. There's no need for it to go that fast. So I think that some of these outliers that are in the heavy tanks that do go very, very fast should be brought back. Because when you do use a turbo on these tanks, it then becomes excessive. Now, moving on to CVS. I genuinely don't know why this was added. Because light tanks already had their role, and now medium tanks can do the light tank role. To fix this, this is very, very simple. Okay, to fix this issue. 1, you nerf CVS. This becomes 5, and this becomes 10. And the concealment of moving vehicles, that's fine. You can keep that. But this should be nerfed to like 5 when it's base, and then 10 if it's in the correct slot. Because it makes bushy maps so easy to scout. And if one person has CVS and the other one doesn't, the one that has CVS will always win. Always. And then you remove it from medium tanks. You make it so that light tanks are the only ones that can use CVS. Because it doesn't make sense that a medium tank, let's go ahead and say the pattern, for example. If the pattern was to use CVS, CVS optics and a rammer, which is what I suggest most people to do. Right, let's say you get 100% crew, you get all the perks. You have 534 meters view range with CVS in the correct slot. There's no reason for CVS to be on mediums. None. And for those of you that say, well, actually you need it for when there's no light tanks on the map, there should always have one light tank on your team. Always, at the bare minimum, there should be one light tank, and it should be capped to 2 per team. Because currently, if you don't have a scouting loadout as your secondary, if you have the field mods, you're just doing it wrong. Because you're basically sacrificing yourself free spotting damage for when you get on those maps. Because you can go nearly as fast as a light tank, you can go and spot as well as a light tank, and then you have the extra firepower over the light tank. So there we go, that is everything that I wanted to speak about today. I don't expect anything to happen. I don't. This is kind of more just a venting, getting it out off my chest. And letting you hear my opinions on different things. So, thank you very much for watching. Leave your comments down below with your opinions. And it should be interesting. I'm sure some people are going to still say that I'm completely wrong, even though it's my opinion. And it can't be wrong. And neither can yours. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you later.